everybody, welcome to our second workshop. My name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition Emotion. I'm so happy, I'm so excited, I'm so grateful to have you here for our second workshop. I am pumped for you to experience our guest speaker later on this evening. But before we get started, I want to touch up on a couple of quick points. So you are starting your mentor relationship. That is awesome. Hopefully you've had your first conversation. I'd love to learn about it. Post maybe about some of the key talking points that you've had for your first meeting in the comment section. Would love to learn about how that first meeting has gone. But yeah, this workshop's all about how to network in a genuine way and really make the most out of it. This workshop should be about an hour long. As a reminder, I'm going to ask you 3 questions during the duration of this workshop. Once we have asked those questions, I'll expect you to answer them. That's how you get credit for participating and being here at the workshops. I'm really excited for you to experience our guest speaker tonight. I'm really excited to dive into this. Now, this is what's really key. I mean, genuine networking is such a pivotal component to building rapport, to getting job offers, to getting promotions. Really, if you can hone this skill, if you can hone this ability, you will be set professionally, because ultimately, at the end of the day, your hard skills, that being your ability to crunch numbers, to do some form of engineering, to do some form of science, like all those things are pretty good. They're very easy to measure. So it's very clear whether or not you are better or worse than somebody on a hard skill. But your soft skills are much more difficult to measure. But those soft skills are really what's going to set you apart. I mean, as they say, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And this is the workshop about how you can know more people and have a stronger bond with them, because then it goes to your reputation. Because if you have a reputation for treating people like garbage, you're not going to have a great reputation. People are going to want to help connect you with other people. If you come in with low energy, if you come in with a bad state, if you come in talking trash about other people, you're not going to put yourself in a good position. And so I want to be very clear. When it comes to networking, when it comes to building a relationship, it is not all about the transaction. If you're coming into a networking situation, you're thinking to yourself, what is in it for me? You are not going to have a positive outcome. I promise you on that. I really want to be clear. It's not all about landing the job or the internship. Sometimes it's about building the relationship and then playing the long game, because ultimately that may turn into an opportunity because they built a rapport with you. But if you burn them, or if you make them feel like you are using them to get to a location that you would like to be, they can smell that on you. They can smell it from a mile away. And that is not great. As they say, desperation reeks. You do not want to be desperate. You don't want to be perceived as someone that's a user or a taker. You want to be a giver. You want to be someone who gives energy to relationships. The first place to start is being genuine with how you talk to people and how you build rapport with people. Now, this is something we talked about last time, but it is so important, and that is the 3 keys to success in this program. That is honing your strategy, your story, and your state. As we've said before, your state is most important. So physically, how are you? Physically, what is going on with your world? Physically, I don't care what is happening. If you recently broke up with your significant other, if your dog just died, if you got some bad news, I don't care what's going on. If you get up, if you shake it out, if you let it loose, you will get yourself into a positive state. So I want to challenge you to do that right now. I want you to get up, and I want you to shake it loose. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just go, yeah, just let it out, let it loose, let it go. Because what you're doing is you're releasing blood to your brain. You're releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself into a state conducive for retaining information. If you're just sitting there on a couch or in a chair in a slumped over position, your likelihood of retaining any of the information we talk about tonight is severely diminished. But if you come in standing up, moving around, getting your blood flowing, you are much more likely to retain this information. Have you ever found it difficult in a classroom setting to remember what your professor says if you've been sitting for 3 hours? That's why 3-hour lectures really struggle to work. They're not very effective because people are not moving around. Your brain needs blood to retain information. So get up, get moving, get out, get loose. Now, the second key is your story. What is the story you tell yourself for why you will or will not be successful? I promise you right now, you will achieve up to the goals that you set for yourself in life and no higher. So you might as well shoot for the stars and land on the moon than shoot for the moon and end up in nowhere. Because if you are not focused about where you want to be, or really having a big, hairy, crazy, audacious goal for yourself, what are you doing? Like, are you just saying to yourself, like, I'm cool with winding up short, with, settling down and just settling for everything in my life? If that's the case, this program's not for you. I can tell you that right now. This program is not for you if you're trying to settle. But if you're someone that wants to go for it, if you want to go big, if you want to go out there for the opportunities that you want to see in your life, this program is absolutely for you. Let this program be a springboard. Let your mentor be a Sherpa that's guiding you up this mountain of life and success and help you get to where you want to be. This is someone who wants to guide you, that wants to help you. They wouldn't have signed up for this program if they weren't interested in seeing you succeed. So I want to be very clear with you. What is the story for why you will be successful? Understand that, hone it, be prepared. In fact, I would challenge you to write this down. Write it on a piece of paper. It's more likely to stick in your mind if you write it on a piece of paper of where you want to be. Stick it up on your wall. Stick it up on your desk. Stick it up on your dresser. Stick it up on your mirror. Something that's going to remind you of where you want to be in 1 month, 3 months, 1 year from now. That will help you set the target of where you want to go. Because if you don't set these goals, you're going to be on a path that's got really no clear outcome of where you want to go. So the last part is your strategy. What are you going to do to set yourself apart? Now, when it comes to strategies, I'm a big believer in routines. When I say routines, I mean literally getting into a daily habit that you can practice regularly so then you can be better at a skill. We think about habits sometimes in a negative light because we think about people just being addicted to bad actions, but I believe that habits can also be attributed in a positive light as well. What is a positive habit you can get into to help you build more genuine relationships? I believe one thing you can do is to be intentional about having an informational interview every single week with a new person, with a new professional in your field. You can leverage LinkedIn. You could go to a professor's office hours. You could talk to a friend of yours whose parent works in the field that you're interested in working towards, or a family friend that you know works in the field that you're interested in working towards. If you set up one informational interview every single week, and by an informational interview, I want to be very clear. This is a conversation. This isn't an interview. You're not trying to get a job from this person. You're just trying to get knowledge about what this work is like. Set up one of those a week. I can promise you they're going to start making introductions for you. They're going to start helping you get to where you want to be. By the way, if your goals change over time, that's okay. That's totally okay. You can share with them how your goals have changed. They're going to want to keep helping you over time. I'll give you a perfect example of this. As an entrepreneur, I set goals all the time. I have a board of mentors. I literally have about 50 to 100 mentors that I send once every 3 months an update of what's going on with the business. Here's the thing though, I've pivoted this business many, many times. Now, initially when I first got started, I was thinking to myself like, oh, well, they're my mentors. Like, if I tell them that I've pivoted, will they think I'm a total failure? Will they not want to help me anymore? What I found is that is absolutely not the case. They're always there to support me. Mentors that have been with me for 5+ years still give me guidance, still help make introductions, still help me out and support me as my mission has grown, as my goals have grown. That is the nature of mentoring relationships. That is the nature of relationships in general. You should keep your network up to date with what is going on in your world because they will want to see you succeed. But the key is that you ask them for something specific. When I meet with my mentors or when I send them an email, I ask for something very, very specific. I don't say, hey, if you know anybody in XYZ space, if you could introduce me, would love that. Why? Because it's not at the top of their mind. What I'll do is I'll physically go onto their LinkedIn profile, look at who they're connected with and say, hey, I noticed that you're connected with Jane Doe, John Doe, Shelby Doe, and Jenny Doe. I know that you may not be connected with all 4 of those people, but if you are connected with one of them, would you mind introducing me? Here's an email template that you could copy and paste to introduce me. Now I've made it extremely specific and easy for them to take an action step to help me out. And that is how you can continue to grow your relationships, your network, and build rapport with people. And just keep them in the loop of what's going on in your world. So I just want to be very clear. It's about building genuine relationships. And it's about when you're building those genuine relationships and then you're asking them for introductions or connecting with more people through those relationships, being very specific and making it as easy as possible for them to help you out. I really want to stress this. It's so important. Genuine networking. If you can take anything from this whole program, if it's genuine networking, and by genuine networking, I mean really listening, taking an active and keen interest in who you are speaking with, you are going to be set. You're going to be in a great position. Because at the end of the day, it's not your elevator pitch. It's not going to be anything about you that makes someone interested in you. It's going to be about your ability to listen to them. In fact, I can tell you multiple times where I didn't say a word in a conversation. I just nodded my head yes and asked questions about things that somebody else has said. And at the end of the conversation, whether that be 30 minutes or 60 minutes long, they said, man, Garrett, you are such a great conversationalist. Or, gosh, I feel like I just had such a great conversation with you. And the funniest thing about it is I didn't actually say a word. The point is this: people love to talk about themselves. Why? Because people are really interested in things that they're interested in. People wouldn't choose to spend that they have the time that they have on this earth in the way that they did unless they thought it was the most optimum way of spending their time. Therefore, things that interest them, things that they choose to spend their time on, are things that interest them and ultimately make you interesting to them because you've taken an interest in those actions and activities. I hope that makes sense. If you want to rewatch that, take that back 30 seconds because I think it's really important. People ultimately, at the end of the day, people care about themselves. People care about things that they are interested in because they've chosen to spend the time that they have on those tasks. So with that said, I'm excited to jump in to our guest speaker this evening. Really, the whole point of this workshop is about genuine networking. By the way, if you have not connected with me on LinkedIn, please do. I'll add you to our LinkedIn group where we discuss different topics, and just you can add different topics, ask any questions, and expand it to our entire Ambition in Motion network. Connect with me. I'll add you to the group. But yeah, I'm so excited to get started. Let's jump into our guest speaker this evening.
Everybody, welcome to our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to dive into our topic, how to network in a genuine way. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, I know how to talk to people. I know how to network. I know what I'm doing. Here's what we're here to talk about. When it comes to talking about how to network in a genuine way, we're here to talk about why it's not just about if someone can give you a job right now. It's talking about the long-term proposition of what this relationship could entail. And maybe it entails nothing, but that's okay because the reputation that you build for yourself over time and why that's so critical. I've got a great guest here with us. I've got Kristi Rubino. Kristi has been doing some awesome work in the professional space, and she has learned a lot of lessons in terms of how to network in a genuine way. Kristi, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Kristi, I'd love to just maybe start with your story. How'd you get into your job? Like tell me the story of going from college to, to essentially where you're at today.
Okay. Well, I started out as a creative art major and I switched to communications. So a natural fit for me was marketing. It allowed me to utilize all those skills. And so I got a job. My first job in marketing was connection from my brother-in-law at a tech company. And I grew there and then moved that role into commercial furnishings. And I've been in that industry for over 20 years now. It's one of those industries where at first on the scene, I thought it was enormous. And now that I've been in it for so long, I realize just how small it is and how many people I see on a regular basis or I connect with, and then I'm working alongside them a few years later. So all the connections that we've made there are really important. So I worked my way up from editing price list. And that's back when things were printed and I had a 300-page price list to edit, up to, rebranding several different companies, building relationships with sales reps and communication. And I think I've done just about everything that I can do marketing wise in my industry and love it.
That's cool. I love the story of your brother-in-law helping connect you in the space. I guess tell me, have you ever had a scenario where you got an opportunity when you had no expectations of an opportunity being there and you just, had been building that relationship over time and just being a genuinely kind person, and then all of a sudden, boom, someone have you ever had a story like that before?
Yes, actually, the role that I'm in right now is somewhat along those lines, with the twist of it's a company I worked for previously. Um, and I knew the owner of the company because they were connected to the business I was working in and I was moving. And it was the only company that I knew that was in the industry. They did not have a position open. They didn't have even remotely anything near what I was doing. But I stuck on them for maybe 3 months. I kept reaching out and they eventually hired me and I had a really good relationship with Rob. I did find another opportunity through someone that I knew that was going to expand my role. It was going to give me a bigger insight into the industry and how it worked, and I was very curious about that. So I left, and but I kept in touch with the company that I'd worked with. Just these small things sometimes just on LinkedIn, it's so and so's birthday, and I'll reach out and say, Hope you're doing well." And then at industry events, just connecting with them. And then when it came time for the company that I had worked for previously to expand into territories where now I had all this knowledge, then, they reached out to me and said, "You'd be perfect. You already have background, but you also now have this newfound set of skills. And so we would love for you to come back and work for us." And that was completely out of the blue. But it was a very timely ask. So I was happy to take it.
I love that. I love your story about how you became a boomerang. And by that, I just mean you left an organization, but maintained a positive relationship with them so much so that you essentially were treated as an alumnus of that company. And they were like, "We would love to bring you back with open arms, Kristi." And that, I think, is a really powerful message for students. Don't, like, your reputation is so powerful.
Mhm.
I think a lot of students, and just I've seen this a lot actually lately, where people will give zero notice when they're leaving their organization or leave with a very bad taste in their mouth. And it is such a bad call. It is so short-sighted.
Mhm.
I shoot, I'll in our mastermind group, we've got somebody who one of her direct reports, who had been at the company for 6 years, said, "Screw it, I'm out, no notice, no nothing, poof, gone." And then a month and a half later follows up with her and was like, "Hey, could I get a reference?" And it's like, absolutely not. Are you out of your mind? I don't care if you put 6 years, 2 years, 1 year, doesn't matter. You totally ended on the most sour notion. And if you are a student and you're wanting to be the best professional, you want to maintain your options and maintain great relationships with people, don't burn bridges. And it was literally, it's like the ultimate play of professional karma.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. Like I said, like the industry I work in, I thought was huge. I could have said, "Oh, it doesn't matter. I'll never see these people again." But it's completely untrue. As you grow and you work through an industry, if you stick with it, you're going to cross paths with people that you've worked with in the past who know somebody who knows somebody. They just change jobs, you change jobs. It's so important to always treat people with respect, no matter what the situation is. And then just professionally, you're a professional. So sometimes it's awkward and it's hard, but sticking through that 2 weeks and leaving on good terms really does pay off at the end.
Yes, 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 100% yes. What is when you're meeting with somebody, what have you identified as character traits that convey that someone's being genuine?
That is such a great question and so important to me because authenticity is like a key element in any relationship that I have. So I would say the number one thing anyone can do is just listen. It's so simple. But when you listen to someone, it shows them respect. It shows that you actually care what they have to say. And everyone's time is so valuable. So you just don't want to give it to people who you don't feel like are taking it seriously or going to do something positive with it. Having said that, even as a mentor, as someone who's been in the industry for a while, it's still a two-way street because you might need something from someone coming out of school. They might have a perspective that you need in your job. Companies pay top dollar to get insight of all sorts of perspectives of younger people. And so what you have to say is also very important. So in that relationship, it's great for the mentor to also listen to you. So I think just that two-way street of actually being present and listening to what the person has to say, um, responding thoughtfully, not just responding to respond or responding to say or show your own knowledge, but actually giving it a thoughtful response. Um, that's something that is actually valuable in any relationship that you would have, and this mentor relationship would be no different.
I think active listening is so big, but within the active listening, with your body language communicating that you're active listening. I think I really want to differentiate that for the students is
Mhm.
if you're listening, but you're being dismissive, looking as if you're not engaged, looking like you're not paying any attention, yawning, whatever, not really focused on the conversation itself, that is it, yeah, I guess, I don't know. If you had to choose, you'd rather look like you're listening and not be listening to a word that's being heard because it's how you make them feel, than be actively listening but communicate that you're not listening at all. Um,
Right.
so I know that sounds silly to say. Obviously, you don't have to choose both. Ideally, your body language is communicating that you're listening and you're actually listening, but it reaffirms what somebody's saying. And your body language is what I would argue is as important, if not more important, than the actual act of actively listening.
Yes, you're communicating back even without saying anything. So that's really important that you're acknowledged. I mean, you can tell when somebody's in their own head when you're speaking with them, or worse, speaking about thinking about something else entirely. And like I said, your time, your personal time, is the most valuable possession that you have. So, make sure that someone feels like it's worth their while to talk to you and give you advice.
Has anybody, what has anybody on the flip side, has anybody communicated with you and you were like, man, this feels transactional. This feels as if this is not authentic. What did they do? What are what are tips for students that they should avoid when networking?
Um, so in marketing, I get a lot of people coming up to me and asking me for various things. Um, I think making assumptions. If somebody has, even if they've done some research and they know who I am, they're making assumptions about why I am where I am, or why I've taken a company in this one direction, and just automatically come out of the gate with, "Here's some advice for you." I just feel like that's disingenuous, because of course, any project that you have, there is a long lead time to get there and a lot of backstory. So without actually hearing from the person what it is that they need, you can't really you can't really help them. So and like you said, body language is a big one. If someone's coming up to me and they're looking around the entire time and just waiting for somebody else to, like, oh, I also want to talk to that person, then it's like, well, I don't know why you even bothered to stop and talk to me. Um, so there's a lot of that. You can tell. I think you can tell, especially in a marketing role, when someone has, I don't know, read an article, listened to a podcast, read a blog, and it gives you tips, and everybody's using the same tips over and over again. So it's like, okay, everybody read the same thing. It's not a genuine conversation. So I think just approaching it as your authentic, genuine self in a professional way. Um, and really trying to decide, can we help each other? It's a two-way street. Can we help each other? Um, that's going to be sussed out in the conversation.
I love what you shared about advice. I think that makes a ton of sense. I think a lot of times people who give advice have a good heart with the advice that they're giving. Like they're not trying to be disingenuous when doing that, but they have not asked for permission and they have not fully asked enough questions to be educated about the situation that they're being presented with. Is there a way, yeah, I guess from your perspective, is there a good way to give advice, or is there a good way to be helpful without being disingenuous? Does that question make sense?
Absolutely. I think there's, you know, people have come to me in my marketing role, and they do have some genuine good advice to share. Or as a person, as a mentor, a relationship, something like that, they have read an article that would be something that I would benefit from, and would send it along and say, hey, I just found this piece of information. I thought in your role, this would be helpful for you. And, just shared it that way. I mean, anytime that you come with someone and you're actually genuine about the advice that you're imparting or what you want to share with them, it's a good thing, whether the person needs it or not. Um, did I answer your question? I'm not sure.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think it's a really good answer. I'd love to ask the students a real quick question. What is something that you either do or would like to be doing to communicate that you are actively listening to somebody? Post in the comment section. I love to learn your thoughts on that. So it doesn't, maybe you're not doing it yet, but you aspire to be better at it, or something you do really well to show that you're active listening. I love to learn about that. Post in the comment section. So we talked a little bit about how you were like at this company previously, and then you came back. How did you land this role? What was that process? Did someone reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? Was it just kind of you ran into each other and they were like, "Oh my gosh, we have this need, Kristi, you'd be so helpful to us." Like, what was that? What was that story like?
So I continued to, like I said, anytime I had a chance at a show, make a point to go in and say hello to the company and the people that I worked with previously. And then, after that, after one of the times doing that, about a month later, I get a call from the president and said, hey, we want to expand our operations into this area. And I know that you have experience there. Would you be open to talking? And so, we had a phone conversation and, was, do you want to continue the conversation? I said, sure. As you develop this role, stay in touch and let me know how it's going. I was very honest about where I was with my job at that time. I said, we're right in the middle of doing this. It would not be a really good time for me to switch right at present. But let me know, as your search continues. And so, a couple months later, he reached out again and said, I would like for you to, let's have lunch. And I'm going to bring another person involved. I'm going to bring my CFO. So we had lunch and we talked a little bit further about what I could help the company, help solve for them. And then just being very honest about, where I was with my position, what was important to me, and what I was looking for if I were to make that move. I was in the position of, having a job already, which is a great position to be in. So, it was really about, okay, we want to transition at this time. Does this work for you? And I think it was actually a few months after that, because we had a really big project going on that I wanted to see through at my company. Like I said, we talked about burning bridges, and I really don't feel good about leaving people in a position where I've started something and not finished it. So I was able to work through that with the new company, or the company I'm with now, and it all worked for the best.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's a really interesting point within your story that I want to highlight to the students, and that is the power of not being desperate. In your scenario, you had a job. And even if you didn't have a job, you didn't come into the conversation being like, "Oh my gosh, this is perfect for me." And then you scare them off. There's there's just this notion of being very clear about what you're looking for. I think sometimes students are so desperate to get that first job offer and just take it whenever they can get it, because they're freaking out a little bit. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I need this job offer," and they're not actually defining what they want for the company. And you even highlighted some great questions to ask of, okay, company, what are you looking for in this position? Here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for A, B, and C. You're looking for X, Y, and Z. I just want to make sure that we're in alignment here. I want to make sure that I can deliver for you and that you can deliver for me and my goals for this next position. And if the company really wants you, they will do what it takes to more or less bring you in. And if they don't, and it's kind of like they treat you as if like you're a number, you know what? It's probably how they're going to treat every other employee that they're bringing in at that point in time, and therefore it might not be the right fit. I know that may sound well, not actually harsh, but maybe not even eye-opening, but they may just sound kind of direct, but it's true. Like, if a company or an organization treats you as if like, hey, if you got these demands for your employment and I mean, do some research, identify what is a reasonable thing to ask for an employer. But if what you're asking for isn't unreasonable and they're balking back and being like, you should feel lucky to have this job, but that's an old school mindset. That's a likelihood and indicator that it's a toxic culture and something you probably don't want to be involved with, because the leadership landscape is changing right now, and anybody who thinks that this command and control or you should feel lucky to have a job, these like Great Depression era mentalities of like you'll be homeless if you don't have this job type of thing, they're long gone. And anybody who still operates with that is probably probably not doing a good job of keeping their people, because it doesn't seem like a good place to work.
Right. You're absolutely right. And it's really just knowing your worth. I mean, you're coming in there with a skill set. You've gained knowledge, experience. You have worth, and knowing what that is and being able to convey that to somebody, so that they can understand what you're bringing to the table. And I mean, that I've hired a number of people, and really that's what I was always looking for. Like, I don't expect people that are coming in to know everything about the job or the position or the industry, but the attitude of, being humble enough to learn, but also bringing something to the table that will benefit the company right away. It always went really far with me. And I have unfortunately hired people who have misrepresented what they could do. It was a horrible situation for everybody involved. You know, and that is not the way to go. I would rather someone say, I don't know how to do this and this, but here's what I have for you, and be a very honest transaction. Um, and knowing what you bring, and it's a lot. Um, Especially where I am in marketing, because that landscape changes so frequently, and you have to keep up with everything going on. And so, an age differentiation doesn't necessarily work in your favor when you're older in marketing. You always have to have that open mindset. So if that's something that you're pursuing, make sure that the company you're going to work for understands truly how immersed you are in what you're doing and what it brings to the table.
Do you mind elaborating on that a little bit? Because I think there are a lot of roles. Like, there are some things like sales where it's like, oh, I put in these activities, I brought in this much sales. Very easy to quantify. But
Mhm.
in a lot of other roles, whether you're, especially like marketing, HR, uh, to an extent technology, especially if you're like a supporting person on a big project where it's not easy to quantify exactly what you did to contribute this. Like,
Mhm.
what is a good way of quantifying and helping immersing your leadership in everything you're doing without being braggadocious or annoying?
Mhm. Well, at first I would say that, as somebody who's been in the industry for a while, and marketing for a long time and hiring, it's not my role to know everything either. My role is to hire the right people that know what to do. And I'm very open personally to hearing that information from somebody. And I could go as far to say, I don't even want to do some of those things. I've, done a lot, and now I'm very happy managing capable people to do it. So what I'm looking for is somebody capable. And so when you come in and you say something like, okay, here's a project that I did in school. And, this is, let's say it's something with social media or something where you're getting feedback, and you can quantify the number of followers you had in the beginning versus the end, or very specific campaigns or something that you've done to see a spike, and getting feedback. uh, those are all things that really are important to someone hiring. It's not necessarily even the number. It's really the attitude of, I'm growing, I'm going to grow the company in this way, and this is what I can do for the department that I'm going to be joining. um, but there are a lot of things that you can't really quantify in marketing, so that's always our hardest question to answer. um, but there's a lot of research out there about what's effective and what isn't, and it changes all the time. So somebody who's learning it right now is going to learn a completely different set of things than what I learned. And it'll be easier for them to implement some of those things than it would be for me right now.
So true. That's so interesting. I like that. I also love what you said about being honest about what you do and what you're doing. This is something that started happening recently, is people blatantly flubbing their resumes or putting on experiences that didn't actually happen. And it's like, you're going to get sussed out. Like, even if the company doesn't do a background reference check, uh, they're going to suss you out. They're going to figure this one out. They're going to know whether or not you're being real or whether or not you're not being real. And so,
Exactly.
even if you get the job, they figure it out, and just reputationally has a really big risk. You'd rather be upfront about what you know and what you don't know, what you can do, what year, like, hey, I can do that, but I don't know, like, this will be my first time doing it. And just being transparent, I think that can go a huge way towards building trust with people, because they know when you tell them you got this, they feel confident that you've actually got this, because you've told them in the past about things that you didn't have, or that you're like, hey, I'm learning, not the best at this. And it builds that trust. Whereas if you tell everybody all the time, oh, I got this, I can do that, I can do this, I've done this a million times, and you have never done it before, it can be damaging. But at the same time, I do want to also acknowledge that as a college student, you're coming out, you probably don't have that many experiences doing a lot of things, and you want to convey enough confidence, or rather, maybe not confidence, enough curiosity to know that you are willing to learn to become better and good at this sort of activity that you've maybe never done before. You've done very, very little.
Right.
Because I think that curiosity is probably a really critical deal, because you may not have all the experiences of the world, but if you don't show that you're interested in learning about it, then that might be a red flag, and something that an employer might say, I won't give you that opportunity because you're not showing me that you're interested in actually learning it.
That's 100% right. Because I've had some things that I've wanted to do, some projects I wanted to accomplish in this very exact way. And I've had people come in and say, yeah, okay, if we can do that and get the same end result, but approach it in this way instead, because what I'm learning is this, I really pay attention to that person and appreciate that input, because at the end of the day, they're saving me from making a mistake, and that's huge. But it comes with being honest and transparent with somebody enough that you can have that two-way conversation, and it's not going to make the person who is maybe hiring you feel like you think they don't know what they're talking about. And then the person that's hiring, like Garrett was mentioning, like you can't be that way anymore. You can't be like, this is the law. And if you don't do this, then you're out. It really needs to be a two-way communication, and everybody working toward the same goal as a collaborative effort.
I'd love to ask the students a question real quick. How do you stay in touch with your network over time? Post it in the comment section. I'd love to learn. But I'd also love to ask you that same question, Kristi. How do you stay in touch with your network over time?
So it's very difficult to because I know so many people now that it's difficult to say, oh, I just reach out to them every 3 months. That wouldn't be possible for me, and it really wouldn't be genuine either. Um, so I make a point to connect with people who I feel are we have a good relationship. I actually just recently connected with somebody who was in town for a show, and I worked with him at my very first job. And we have been maintaining this professional relationship over 20 years, and worked together in, I think, 4 different capacities over the course of 20 years. And when he was coming into town, he texted me and said, I'm going to be in town. Is there any way possible that I can see you? And of course, in that situation, I'm going to make a point to stop what I'm doing and go see somebody who is so close to me. If that's not possible, you know, there are always ways on social media and LinkedIn that you can stay connected. Or, as I was saying earlier, if you find some piece of information that somebody in your network would find valuable, just to send that along. Say, I thought of you when I saw this. I hope everything is okay. I hope you're doing well. We need to catch up soon. And then, I do plan some regular phone calls with people who I'm very close to, who we work in a capacity that it is more give and take on a regular basis. And so for those people, I would have a 30-minute conversation with them over my lunch hour, once every 3 months or so.
I love that. And I also love that you brought up this interesting point, and I don't even know if you were even intending to do this, but I think there's a ton of power in this, of when you are in town, people are much more likely to meet with you.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of students that might think to themselves like, oh my gosh, imposter syndrome, why would this person want to meet with me? I'm a big fan of informational interviews. And if there's someone that maybe is a family friend, somebody that you know, someone that you admire, someone that you love to learn from, and you are just still figuring out your own path, you could say, hey, I'm going to be in town on this date from this time period. Is there any chance I could take you out for coffee or lunch or a beverage of sorts? That would go a long way towards getting people to be like, yeah, because they'll make time on their calendar when you're in town. And I know it sounds silly, but shoot, I feel like I personally stay in touch with people when they're out of town coming back into town, and sometimes people that are in my own town, because I just take it for granted. I'm like, oh, I can meet with you whenever. Whereas I know they're only here for this finite period of time. And then I look at the frequency of how often we meet, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I meet
Right.
with these people from out of town a whole lot more frequently than I do the people in my own town.
And then even at like trade shows or, industry events, just doing that pre-planning and reaching out to people that you know are going to be there, because everybody gets really busy just saying, hey, I have 4 to 6 on Monday, can we have a drink? Or I'm going to be in town a day early, would love to have coffee with you. And just so you don't miss people who are important, making that effort, just like you would in anything in your life, just shows people that you respect them enough and you care. So um, I would say it's easy to go out of town where a lot of people will be and just get so wrapped up in what you need to do that you forget to set aside some time for just a catch up and a hello.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. No, that makes tons of sense. On kind of this topic, what do you do to refine your relationship building skills? How do you go about staying sharp in this area? I think sometimes, well, I think for students, most students are open to this idea of refining their relationship building skills right now because they're young and they're starting and they're getting things off the ground, and they recognize, hey, I'm going to college and I'm ready to amplify myself to whatever space I'd like to get into. But sometimes over time, it can be easy to fall into a routine and just feel like, oh, I've been here doing this for XYZ number of years. I got this. I know what I'm doing. What do you do to almost humble yourself to refine those relationship buildings and recognize there's always opportunities to learn and grow?
It's a great question. Um, you know, you can never really hone your active listening skills enough. I think just being aware. I listen to a lot of podcasts and around the subject of emotional intelligence. Um, it's just because you do get into your head, and after working for a while, you can get into this mindset of, oh, wow, I mean, I got this. I know what I'm doing. Look at me. Um, but then if you really stop and find ways to listen, like in the job that I'm doing right now, honestly, I had a task to do. I had one task that I just wanted to get off my plate. And I'm like, I got this. All I need to do is ask this person for this one thing and we're done. And in the conversation, once I actually stopped trying to get my project done and listened to what she was telling me, then it opened up this whole area of growth for me that, after all these years and at 51 is an amazing experience. So I think just being humble enough to know that you don't know everything. I think actually the older you get, the less you think you know, or the the less you realize that you don't know everything. It's a great experience. Um but I wouldn't have just come on my own and said, oh, I need to learn more in this area. I only did that because I stopped. She was persistent. I'm like, okay, she's trying to tell me something. What is it? And then I listened to what she had to say. And then she brought in more people who were having that same conversation. And then, a light bulb went off. I was like, okay, this is not only a great thing for me personally to know, this is a great thing for the industry that we're in. And I want to be a part of it and keep learning and keep growing and keep networking, because it did expand my network by about 10 people in the course of 3 days.
That's cool. I would love to ask the students a question real quick. What do you want to do to refine your networking skills and your just relationship building abilities? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn. But Kristi, I love to I don't know. I'd love to have you elaborate more on the topic. You felt like as the older you get, the more, not necessarily you're unsure of yourself, but the more you question, you're like, do I really know all this about this area? I find that fascinating because I feel like my assumption is it goes in one of very two ways. You either harden in and you're like, I'm not learning anything. I've learned everything I need to know, and I'm good. I've made it.
Mhm.
And you've got others where they're genuinely curious and they're on this path of growth and knowledge over time. But yeah, tell me about that. You mentioned that you feel like as you've gotten older, you've become more curious. But what happened? What inspired that kind of mode of self-awareness or thinking?
So I mean, I have always been a curious person. That helps. And I've always actually, I think when I was a young person, I was shy, so I listened a lot then. And then I kind of grew out of that, and then had had some early successes in my career. I'll just say that. And so I thought, well, I guess I'm really good at this. And some of the older people that I worked around, um, would try to get me to come back and do things the way that they had done. And I'm like, no, this is what we're going to do. And it worked. So I really didn't have a reason to think of myself as not being successful, just the way that I was. But then as time went on and I opened my mind and saw what other people were doing, and I realized that didn't even cross my mind what they're doing. And it's brilliant. So you just kind of get these little hints into things that things that you could have done or could have done better had you only taken the time to sit back, maybe read a little more, maybe talk to people a little bit more and understand and actively listen to what they had to say. um, that project or that role you could have done 10 times better. um, and so after that experience happens to you a few times, then you start to realize that there are a lot of people with a lot of skill sets, young, old, every demographic. And if you go into it thinking, I can learn from everybody around me, then it opens up like so much of a new world for you. And it's actually quite brilliant.
That's awesome. Well, Kristi, this has been a great workshop. Thanks for taking the time to share your insight with our students and our audience. Do you have any final tips or suggestions or things that our students should be thinking about as they move into their careers?
Yeah, I think I am envious of people that are just moving into the careers because there's so much possibility, there's so many avenues to take, and things are opening up quite nicely, and a little bit scary. There's so many different things going on. But I think through all of it, if you are yourself, I mean, you are a unique person with a unique perspective, and uh, be that person. You're somebody that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, and people need to know that and know you. So always be yourself, always be humble, and go for it.
Very cool. Well, Kristi, thanks for being here. Students, thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. See everybody.